My brother punched me into the wall. I was bleeding and tried to fight back. Dad grabbed me and said, "He's the face of the family. Touch him and you'll regret it." That's when I realized I was never part of this family. Hey, Reddit. I'm not the kind of guy who usually posts stuff like this, but I've been sitting on something that's been eating at me for years. My family looks perfect from the outside, rich, respected, all smiles for the cameras. But behind closed doors, it's a whole different story. I used to think keeping quiet was the only way to survive. Turns out, silence just makes monsters comfortable. This is what really went down. I'm Carl, 26, male. I manage fleet operations for a logistics company. A fancy way of saying I babysit grown men who drive 18-wheelers and track boxes that don't like to stay where they should. It's not a dream job, but it's mine. My parents live in a completely different world. Their driveway could fit my entire apartment building. Dad owns a multi-million-dollar logistics company that builds smart fleet systems, or whatever buzzword they're using this year. Mom spends her days hosting charity galas, pretending she's changing the world by sipping overpriced tea with other bored millionaires. They care more about how things look than how things actually are. Then there's Hunter, my brother. He's 5 years older, the golden son. He's the face of the family business. Magazine covers, charity events, interviews, perfect hair, perfect suit, perfect smile. The kind of guy who looks good shaking hands but leaves bruises when he's angry. Nobody ever talks about that part, though. Thanksgiving was their showpiece holiday, the kind of day they used to parade their perfect family image. Mom in pearls, Dad in a blazer, the table covered in food no one really eats. I almost skipped it this year, but guilt still has a way of whispering in your head. So I drove 2 hours, wore a clean shirt, and showed up. Hunter greeted me at the door like we were buddies. Look who made it, the hardworking hero of the highways. His voice always carried that fake warmth people clap for on TV. He patted my shoulder like he owned me. I smiled and walked past him. Dinner was as fake as expected. Mom talking about her foundation. Dad checking his phone under the table. Hunter bragging about a new contract. The house smelled like butter and money. Too clean, too polished. Even the air felt judgmental. Halfway through dinner, Hunter poured himself another sparkling water and leaned back in his chair. "So, little brother," he said, smirking. "Still playing dispatcher for truckers? How's that treating you?" "It's fleet management," I said. "And yeah, it's fine." He laughed like I'd told a joke. Dad didn't even look up. Mom gave me a soft smile, the kind that says, "Behave." Something in me snapped a little. Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was years of swallowing it. I looked at Hunter and said, "Heard Dad signed the company shares under your name. That true?" Forks stopped clinking for a second. Nobody breathed. Hunter's smirk froze. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom's eyes flicked toward me like I'd just cursed in church. Hunter tilted his head. "Why do you care? You never really lived here after high school. Thought you were too good for this place." "That's not true," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I was just working. Always around when it mattered." He leaned forward, that little spark of cruelty lighting up his eyes. "Yeah, sure. Flying in from your apartment every now and then doesn't exactly count as being around. You're just a visitor at this point." I put down my fork. I just think if we're talking about family property, maybe we should all be part of the conversation. And that's when it happened. Hunter's chair scraped back hard against the tile. He stood up slowly, like he was winding up for something. I barely blinked before his hand was on my collar and the other landed a punch. Next thing I knew, my back hit the wall so hard the fake family picture frames rattled off. The breath rushed out of me. "What did I tell you about talking back?" He hissed, eyes wide. I shoved him off and swung back, hitting his shoulder. But before I could move again, Dad grabbed me from behind, strong for his age, fingers digging into my arms. "Enough," he barked. "You touch him again and you'll regret it, Carl. He's the face of this family. You think I'll let you ruin that?" My lip was bleeding, nose already throbbing. Hunter stood there, chest puffed, looking pleased. Mom didn't move. Didn't even flinch. I stared at her, waiting for something. A look, a word, anything. But she didn't look at me. Not once. Dad finally let go of me. I grabbed a napkin from the table and wiped the blood off my face. The room was dead quiet, except for the sound of football from the living room TV. Hunter sat back down, took a sip of water, and said casually, "You always take things too far." That's when I realized something ugly. This wasn't new to them. It wasn't a shock. It was routine. I stood there for another second, breathing hard. My reflection in the fridge looked pathetic. Blood on my lip, eyes red, shirt wrinkled. Hunter smirked. Dad muttered, "You need to grow up." So I did the only thing I could. I left, grabbed my jacket and walked out into the cold night. The porch light buzzed overhead. My car was parked under that same oak tree I used to climb as a kid when things got bad. I remember standing there, half tempted to go back in, thinking maybe someone would follow me. Maybe Dad. Maybe Mom. But the house stayed dark behind me. On the drive home, I kept hearing Dad's voice in my head. "He's the face of this family." Over and over, like that was supposed to mean something. Maybe it did to them. But sitting there in traffic, staring at my bruised face in the rearview mirror, all I could think was, they didn't raise a family. They raised a brand. And I was never part of it. I kept hearing that sentence all week. He's the face of this family. The more I thought about it, the more it sounded like code for "you're just the punching bag." Because that's what I'd been since the day Hunter realized being 5 years older meant he could get away with anything. He was already bigger, faster, louder, the kind of kid who could break something and convince everyone I did it. I was 6 when he shoved me down the basement steps for the first time. He said I was in his way. I limped for 2 days. Told Mom my leg hurt. She didn't even look up from her magazine. Just said, "You shouldn't pick fights with your brother." I remember sitting there confused. Hadn't even touched him. That's how it always went. Every bruise came with a lecture about learning my place. And every shove turned into a story about me being dramatic. I'd cry, and Mom would sigh like I'd spilled milk instead of blood. By the time I was 10, Hunter had turned bullying into a sport. He'd wait till Dad wasn't around and pin me to the ground just to prove he could. One time, he held me down with his knee on my chest until I couldn't breathe. He laughed while I gasped. Said, "Don't be such a baby." I swung back once. Just once. And when Dad found out, I was the one grounded for a week. "Don't hit your brother," he said. "He's older. Show him respect." Respect. That word got beaten into me long before I ever knew what it meant. It wasn't just home either. At school, he'd corner me in the hallway, shove me into lockers when no one was looking. Once, he told a teacher I'd cheated on a quiz, and she believed him without question. Hunter always had that smile that made adults forget the bad stuff. He was the good kid, the honor roll, the one who shook hands right. I was just the shadow walking 2 steps behind him. When you grow up like that, you start believing it's normal. You start thinking maybe you really are the problem. That's the worst part. It gets in your head. Dad didn't help. He loved talking about strength and discipline. Every time Hunter hurt me, Dad called it toughening you up. Said one day I'd thank him for having a brother like Hunter. Said I was lucky to have someone show me how the world works. You want to know how the world worked in that house? Simple. Hunter did whatever he wanted, and I cleaned up after it. When I was 15, I remember coming home from school to find my guitar snapped in half. I'd saved all summer for it. Hunter shrugged and said it fell. Dad told me to stop crying over material things. I didn't cry that time, though. I just looked at the broken strings and thought, this house eats anything that makes me happy. I tried confronting Hunter once before I moved out. I'd come home for Dad's birthday, and Hunter was already drunk on his own ego. He slapped the back of my head hard, laughing in front of everyone. I stood up and told him to knock it off. Dad glared at me like I'd just cursed at the Pope. "Apologize to your brother," he said. "For what?" I asked. "For being disrespectful." Hunter smirked. That same look he had when we were kids. The one that said, "I win." That night I packed early and left before sunrise. They didn't even notice. I didn't talk to them for months. Not until that Thanksgiving. And walking out of that house again, bleeding and humiliated, I realized something I should have known years ago. Hunter wasn't the problem anymore. The real problem was the people who kept protecting him. They'd built him like a monument, brick by brick, out of excuses. And me. I was the foundation they buried under it. The drive home that night felt endless. Every mile between me and that mansion felt like a layer of weight peeling off. Still, I couldn't shake the memories. The bruises, the laughs, the way Mom always told me to stop overreacting. I sat on the edge of my bed and thought about all those years Hunter got away with it. How he'd use that same charm to smile at cameras, shake hands, and call himself a leader. How Dad would beam beside him, proud. How Mom would nod and say, "That's my boy." Yeah, their boy. Not mine. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, and whispered to no one, "They made him their legacy." The words hung there, heavy. For once, I didn't feel like I was exaggerating. They actually did it. Every rule, every punishment, every fake apology. It was all to keep Hunter shiny and untouchable. The next morning, I realized I'd left my wallet at their place. Figures. I didn't even want to go back, but all my cards were in there, plus my driver's license. No way was I letting Hunter hold that over me. So I got in the truck, drove the 2 hours again, and told myself I'd be in and out before anyone noticed. They weren't home. Mom's car wasn't in the driveway. Dad's fancy sedan was gone too. Hunter was probably off playing boss somewhere. I still had my key, never returned it. The door unlocked easy. The house was quiet in that weird way big houses get when no one's around. Every sound echoes too much. I found my wallet fast, sitting right on the counter next to a stack of mail. I could have just grabbed it and left. Should have, honestly. But standing there, looking around, something about the silence bugged me. This house had always been too clean, too curated. Like even the air had to look expensive. I don't even know what made me go upstairs. Habit, maybe. The attic door was at the end of the hall, right above the guest room. I noticed it was cracked open. Curiosity beat hesitation. I pulled down the ladder and climbed up. The air up there was stale, hot, and smelled like cardboard and mothballs. Boxes everywhere. Stacked, labeled, taped. I brushed my hand over one. The label said Family 1989 to 2001. Mom's handwriting. Inside were photo albums thick with those sticky plastic sleeves. I flipped one open. First page. Mom pregnant, smiling. Dad standing behind her, one arm around her shoulder, the other holding a cigar. The caption underneath in Mom's neat writing. Hunter's arrival. 1992. Page after page. Hunter's first steps. Hunter's birthday parties. Hunter's soccer games. Hunter's graduation. He was everywhere. Every moment, every milestone. I sat back against a box, staring at those pages. Then something caught my eye at the bottom of the box. A manila folder. Documents. Keep safe. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were legal papers. Birth certificates, insurance files, some old tax forms. Hunter's certificate was on top. Dated early 1992. My own. I had to dig to find it. When I did, my heart skipped. It didn't match. Mine was dated 5 years later, but under Mother's name, it wasn't my mom's. Different name, different hospital, different address. Father's name had my dad's full name, clear as day. No blanks. No initials. I froze. It didn't make sense. Unless it did. I wasn't just treated differently because Hunter was older. I was treated differently because I wasn't hers. Dad had an affair. I was the result. The woman on this paper gave birth to me. But Mom, the one who raised me, wasn't her. She was the cover-up. I was the secret they never wanted to exist. I sat there numb. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. Everything that had never made sense, The silence, the distance, the disgust, all of it. Lined up perfectly now. That's why Mom never looked at me the same way. That's why Dad always used "my sons" in public, but Hunter when he actually meant it. That's why Hunter got everything, and I got scraps of guilt. I wanted to laugh. It wasn't even anger yet, just disbelief. They lied for 26 years, and it worked. I shoved the papers back in a folder, but something else slid out, a USB drive taped to the bottom flap, labeled in Dad's handwriting, Company Archive. It looked old, scratched around the edges. Dad always hid sensitive stuff at home, not at the office. Less chance of discovery if an audit ever happened. I pocketed it, climbed down the ladder, and left the house without looking back. When I got home, I plugged the drive into my laptop. At first, it looked like boring files. Old invoices, reports, project updates. Then I saw a folder called Internal Reports. I clicked. Dozens of PDFs. HR complaints, employee write-ups. Most of them had Hunter's name in them. Inappropriate conduct towards staff. Verbal intimidation. Incident with employee in warehouse. Unresolved. Management instructed to close the file. Each one had the same ending note. Issue handled internally. Handled. That word again. The family's favorite excuse. There were even deleted emails. Messages between Dad and HR heads. He kept Outlook mailbox exports at home. PSTs of the deleted stuff. Nothing ever really vanished. I opened one. Keep this quiet. Hunter's reputation can't take another hit. Make her sign the NDA. Another one. He's young, impulsive. He'll learn. Don't involve outsiders. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through them. It was the same pattern. Abuse, cover-up, silence, repeat. They hid my birth. They buried his crimes. And they called it family tradition. I sat there for a while, staring at the screen, feeling something cold and solid forming in my chest. Not sadness. Not even anger. Just clarity. I'd spent years trying to earn my place in that family. Turns out, I was never supposed to have one. But now I had proof. Proof of everything they'd built on lies. Proof of who they really were. And I wasn't about to keep it buried in some attic box. For the first time in my life, I had something real proof. Not feelings. Not memories. Not he said, she said. Actual proof. I'd always been the quiet one, the one who didn't fight back, who swallowed it all. But now I had their own words, their own files, sitting on my screen. I didn't sleep that night. Every email I opened felt like pulling a nail out of their perfect little image. I started saving copies to a new folder, labeling everything carefully. Emails 2007, reports, confidential, internal notes. I didn't even know why I was doing it yet. Instinct, maybe. Years of watching them control every narrative had taught me how important it was to document the truth. By 3 a.m., I had a folder that looked like an audit report. It hit me then that's exactly what it was. A full-blown audit of the family business. I typed a name at the top. Family Business Internal Audit. It felt right, cold, clean, deliberate. I spent the next few days quietly adding more. I pulled property records from the county site. Looked up court filings, employee, reviews, anything with Hunter's name. The pattern was obvious. Complaints disappeared. People who spoke up resigned. The same HR manager's name popped up in every closed case. By the fourth night, my eyes were burning, but I couldn't stop. I started thinking about the people who'd seen things, who'd known. There had to be someone else who tried to speak up. That's when I remembered her. Mrs. Kennedy. She was my middle school teacher, the only adult who ever seemed to notice the bruises. She once pulled me aside after class and asked, real quietly, "Is everything okay at home?" I'd lied, of course. Said I fell off my bike. But she didn't buy it. I remembered her eyes, worried but tired like she'd seen it before. It was a long shot, but I found her online. Same small town, retired now. Her profile picture showed her sitting in front of a shelf of books, smiling like someone who'd earned her peace. I sent a message that just said, "Hi, this is Carl Morgan." You taught me in 8th grade. Can I ask you something about the past? I didn't expect a reply, but the next morning there it was. Of course, Carl. I remember you. Is everything okay? I stared at it for a full minute before typing back. Not really. I need to know if you ever filed anything back then. About me. About Hunter. There was a long pause. 10 minutes later she replied, Yes, I did, but it disappeared. We met that weekend at a little diner off the highway. She looked older but sharper than I remembered. The kind of woman who'd outsmart you politely. Didn't expect to see you again, Carl, she said as I sat down. You look tired. Comes with the family name, I said. She smiled sadly. Your brother still running things? Yeah. And still hitting people. Her eyes flickered just for a second. I knew something was off even back then. You'd flinch when people got too close. I called your mom once. She told me you were sensitive. Then your dad called the school board the next day. I was told to drop it. Did you keep anything? I asked. She reached into her bag and slid a thin folder across the table. Always do. Inside were copies of the report she'd filed, dated, signed, and stamped closed. Photos of my arms from when I'd come to school in short sleeves one day. Notes she'd written about Hunter's behavior and how the parents discouraged investigation. I swallowed hard. You could have thrown this out years ago. I almost did, she said quietly. But something told me I'd need it again. Guess I was right. When I got home, I added her file to my folder. The puzzle pieces were lining up. Every lie, every threat, every fake smile. The next day, I printed out everything I had and spread it across the floor. Birth records, HR complaints, the teacher report, screenshots from the emails. The house looked like a crime scene because it kind of was. It wasn't just Hunter being violent. It was a family operation of silence. Every time he hurt someone, Dad covered it. Every time someone noticed, Mom deflected. And the company's lawyers cleaned it all up like clockwork. I remember sitting there cross-referencing timelines. When one employee quit, another complaint was filed within weeks. Same phrasing, same dismissal. The same pattern stretched across years. You know what's wild? They were so obsessed with hiding everything, they never noticed they left the receipts behind. I scanned and backed up every file. Cloud drive, encrypted folder, flash drive in my glove box, 3 copies. I wasn't going to lose this. Before I shared anything, I blacked out names and faces. The raw stuff only went to the lawyer and CPS, no one else. But collecting evidence wasn't enough. I needed to hit them where it hurt. Needed to hit them where it hurt. Not physically, not with yelling. That's what Hunter did. I was going to do what they'd never expect. Use their own system against them. That night, I started drafting a timeline, like I was preparing a report for work. Organized, logical, no emotion. I listed every date, every complaint, every financial tie that showed Dad used company money to pay off silence. It wasn't just family secrets anymore. It was corporate crime. At some point, I sat back, rubbing my temples, staring at the line that connected it all. Hunter Morgan, face of the company, the golden sun, their pride, their product. And the deeper I dug, the more I saw how rotten that face really was. Around midnight, I renamed the folder one last time. Not family business. Internal audit. Too neat. Too polite. I typed. Operation Golden Sunday. Yeah, because if they wanted a brand so bad, I was about to show them what it looked like when it fell apart. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and let out a slow breath. They built a system of silence. I was going to break it with paperwork. That was the plan. Clean, quiet, controlled. Let them hang themselves with their own documents. No chaos, no shouting, just exposure. But plans don't always stick when real people get involved. It was around 11 p.m. when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally, I ignore those. This time, something made me check. Carl, it's Elena. My stomach dropped. Hunter's wife. I hadn't talked to her since some family gathering 2 years ago where she barely said a word. The kind of woman who smiled in pictures but never really looked happy. Before I could respond, another message came in. Please don't tell him I texted. I don't know who else to reach. I stared at the screen for a moment. My first thought was that Hunter had found out what I was doing. But then a picture popped up, a blurry photo of my niece's arm, bruised and red around the wrist. Then another photo, Elena's face, swollen lip, tear tracks visible. And one short voice recording. Hunter yelling, calling her names, threatening to take everything if she ever embarrassed him again. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until I dropped the phone. I called her immediately. She answered on the second ring, whispering, "Carl." "Yeah, I'm here," I said quietly. "What happened?" He's getting worse," she said, voice trembling. "It used to be just me. He'd shove, hit, whatever, when no one was looking. But now..." She paused, and I could hear her crying softly. "Now it's our daughter. She spilled water on his laptop yesterday, and he grabbed her arm so hard she screamed. I told him to stop, and he shoved me against the wall." I sat there, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles hurt. "Where are you now?" "In the guest room," she said. "He's asleep." I locked the door. "Carl, I can't do this anymore. I don't care about the money or the name. I just want her safe." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The anger that came over me wasn't the kind that made you shout. It was the kind that burned slow and cold. "Elena," I said carefully, "listen to me. You need to get out of that house. Do you have somewhere safe to go?" She sniffled. "My sister's place. She's out of state." "Good. Go there tonight if you can." There was silence for a few seconds. Then she said, "You believe me?" I almost laughed at how broken her voice sounded. "Elena, I've known him my whole life. I don't need proof to believe you." She exhaled shakily, like she'd been holding that breath for years. "I have proof anyway," she said. "I've been keeping things, videos, screenshots, voicemails. I didn't know who'd believe me, but I kept them." "Send them," I said. Within minutes, my phone started lighting up with attachments. Photos, texts, voice notes. One video of him slamming a door while their daughter cried in the background. Another of him pacing, shouting that he'd bury her in court if she ever tried to leave. Each file was worse than the last. "Elena," I said after a while, "I've been collecting things too. About the company, about your husband, about all of them. You're not alone in this. I'm building a case, a real one, with names, documents, and witnesses." There was a pause, then her voice, small but steady. "You're serious, aren't you?" "Dead serious." She didn't speak for a bit. I could hear her daughter's soft breathing in the background, probably asleep beside her. "If I help you," she said finally, "he'll come for me." "He already is," I said. "The difference is now you'll have protection, legal protection, and I'll back you up every step." She went quiet again, then said, "I'll do it. Just promise me one thing. If anything happens to me, make sure he doesn't get her." My throat tightened. "I promise." I logged Mrs. Kennedy as the first witness in the binder and Elena as the second. Clean, simple, no drama, just facts. The next morning, I reached out to a contact I knew from work, a guy who'd helped his sister through a domestic case. He gave me the number of a legal advocate who specialized in abuse and corporate harassment. I sent her a short email, nothing fancy. Just said I needed guidance building a multi-witness case. Family is powerful. Victims are scared to speak. Have evidence. By noon, she replied, "I can help, but you need formal statements." That night, Elena sent me her first one. Typed, dated, signed. She'd even included her daughter's pediatrician notes showing bruises consistent with restraint. It was detailed, heartbreaking, and exactly what I needed. I read it twice. Then I printed it, added it to my binder next to Mrs. Kennedy's report, and sealed it. 2 witnesses now, both with first-hand proof. Hunter always said money could fix anything. That's what made him careless. That's what made all of them careless. They thought their money was a shield. I looked over the stacks of paper and whispered, "He thinks money protects him. Let's see how it does against truth." Then I grabbed my keys and stepped outside. The night air was cold, steady. For the first time in years, I felt calm. This wasn't just my fight anymore. And that meant it was finally winnable. All those years of being the quiet one, the one they called weak, were about to pay off. Because now I had everything. Witnesses, documents, photos, recordings. I'd spent weeks organizing them into one neat, deadly presentation. It wasn't about rage anymore. It was precision. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. A week later, Hunter's company was hosting its annual awards gala downtown. One of those events where everyone dressed like they owned the world. And this year, Hunter was getting the Leadership and Family Values Award. Yeah, family values. I almost laughed when I saw the invite. Mom had posted about it nonstop. "So proud of our son's accomplishments," she wrote, as if she hadn't spent decades ignoring what those accomplishments cost. I wasn't invited, obviously. Didn't matter. I knew the layout, knew the staff, and more importantly, I knew the tech setup. That night, I put on the only suit I owned. I slipped the flash drive into my pocket and drove there with a calm I didn't fully understand. The ballroom was everything I expected. My parents were near the front, smiling for cameras like nothing had ever cracked their perfect image. Hunter stood on stage, shaking hands, laughing too loud. The crowd loved him, of course they did. They always did. I stayed near the back, unseen. The tech booth was on the side behind the last row of tables. 2 young guys handled the screens and projectors. They looked bored out of their minds. I waited until one walked off to grab a drink, then stepped forward like I belonged there. "Hunter wanted me to load an updated clip," I said casually, holding up the flash drive. I'd slipped the AV tech $100 earlier. Told him Hunter wanted to update the slideshow. Money talks. The guy didn't even blink. "Just plug it into the media folder," he said. "Perfect." Hunter started his speech 10 minutes later. Lights dimmed. Music faded. Everyone clapped as he walked up, hand over heart, doing that practiced humble grin. He started with the usual. "My family taught me everything about leadership, about love, about perseverance." I almost rolled my eyes. He was good, I'll give him that. His voice carried like he actually meant it. Cameras flashed. People smiled. He thanked Dad for guidance, Mom for grace. Then he mentioned Elalina and their daughter. His world. That was the moment I felt my jaw tighten. Then came the part I'd been waiting for, the slideshow. It started normal. Photos of company events, smiling employees, charity drives, applause here and there. But about a minute in, the screen flickered. Then it cut to a video. Hunter's voice filled the room. Loud, harsh, unmistakable. "You don't talk back to me. You hear me. You don't ever make me look bad again." Then the sound of something slamming. A child crying in the background. Gasps rippled through the audience. Hunter froze mid-sentence. "Turn it off," he barked toward the tech booth. But I'd already stepped away. The screen cut to emails. His name all over them. HR reports. The line issue handled internally. Then another clip. Him yelling at Elena, calling her useless. Then Mrs. Kennedy's old report popped up. Dated and signed with a note. "Case closed by family request." The room went silent except for the hum of the projector. Hunter's voice broke through again. "This is fake. None of this is real." Dad stood red-faced. "Whoever did this will be dealt with legally." Mom shouted something about stress and context, trying to smile like this was some misunderstanding. But the crowd wasn't buying it. Phones were out recording. Reporters were whispering. One of the company board members had his hand over his mouth, staring at the screen. Then a voice came from the crowd. Calm, steady. "Every word of it is true." Everyone turned. Mrs. Kennedy was standing near the side doors, holding a folder. She looked small, but her voice cut through the noise. "I reported his behavior years ago. Your lawyers buried it." I kept copies. Hunter's face went pale. You don't know what you're talking about. Before he could say more, Elena stepped into view. She wasn't hiding anymore. Dressed in black, eyes tired but fierce. She walked right up to the front. You hit me, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. You hit me and our daughter. You said you'd ruin me if I spoke. The entire room fell dead silent. Hunter looked around, panicking. She's lying. She's unstable. But Elena pulled out her phone and played one more clip. His voice again. You think anyone's going to believe you? You're nothing without me. The sound echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Mom stumbled back. Dad tried to reach the mic, yelling, "Stop this. Enough." But security stepped in, unsure who to listen to. The board members whispered to each other. You could feel the shift, the power leaving their hands one heartbeat at a time. Hunter tried to storm off stage, but reporters were already snapping photos. Someone from the press shouted, "Mr. Morgan, do you have a comment about the abuse allegations?" Another yelled, "Did the company cover this up?" Elena just stood there, tears in her eyes but her chin high. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. I stayed back, watching it unfold, watching 20 years of lies collapse in under 5 minutes. They worshipped their image, so I made sure that's what burned first. The video spread faster than any press release could have dreamed of. By the next morning, every local news site had the clip. Hunter yelling, Elena crying, the board silence. By noon, the headlines read like karma had finally clocked in. For the first time in my life, people saw them how I did. Not as a respectable, picture-perfect family, but as a group of cowards who'd built their name on silence and intimidation. Hunter was the first to fall. Within 24 hours, the company board announced his temporary suspension pending investigation. Corporate talk for "we're done protecting you." The next day, HR issued a public statement acknowledging serious internal misconduct. Half the employees who once kissed his ass deleted their LinkedIn endorsements overnight. Then came the real hit. Child Protective Services and the police opened investigations. Elena had given them everything. Photos, text messages, recordings. They didn't just have accusations. They had proof. He was arrested on suspicion that week and questioned at the precinct. Cameras caught him outside the station in cuffs. And man, the silence after that was loud. Dad's empire started crumbling the moment Hunter's name got dragged through the mud. Investors backed out. Contracts froze. The press started digging into old files and found evidence of tampered HR records. The internal review. Hunter's mess had caused. Turns out Dad personally signed off on several deleted employee complaints. All those years he warned me that I'd ruined the family's image. Turns out it was him doing it all along. He got hit with charges for obstruction and tampering with official records. Not prison level yet, but enough to stain his spotless reputation. Mom didn't fare much better. She lost every social title she used to brag about. The charity board, the women's club, council, even the hospital volunteer committee. When Mrs. Kennedy's testimony hit the internet, people saw the whole pattern. Her silence wasn't motherly. It was compliance. The same people who used to beg for dinner invites were now pretending they barely knew her. The mansion that once hosted perfect Christmas photos was now surrounded by press vans and flashing cameras. Every lie they'd built cracked open for the world to see. And me. I didn't say a word. Not one interview, not one comment. I didn't gloat. I didn't even post online. I just watched the truth do what it does best. Spread quietly but hit hard. A week later, I met up with Elena and her daughter. They were staying in a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but peaceful. There were drawings taped to the fridge, a warm blanket on the couch, and not a single photo of Hunter anywhere. Elena looked different. Still tired, yeah, but lighter somehow, like she could finally breathe. She sleeps through the night now, she said, nodding toward her daughter's room. Used to wake up crying every time a door shut too loud. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. You saved her, she added softly. I shook my head. You did. You stood up when it counted. She smiled a little, like she finally believed it. Before I left, She handed me a small box. Inside was that same bracelet I'd lost the night Hunter slammed me against the fridge. She said she found it when they cleaned out the guest room. The leather was worn, but still holding together. "I think it's yours," she said. I took it, stared at it for a second, then slipped it onto my wrist. It still fit. On my way home, I took the long route. Past the old family mansion, the company building, the streets where I used to feel invisible. The Morgan Fleet Group sign was already covered up. A temporary banner reading North Star Logistics stretched across the old name while they rushed to get real signage made. Just like that. Decades of pretending wiped away in a single rebrand. I parked across the street, rolled down the window, and just watched the crew remove the last few letters. A worker pulled off the M and tossed it into a dumpster. The clang echoed across the lot, and I swear it sounded like the end of something heavy. My phone buzzed once, an unknown number, probably a reporter. I ignored it. I didn't need to explain what happened. The truth didn't need me to narrate it anymore. For the first time in years, my hands weren't shaking. My chest wasn't tight. I just sat there breathing normal. They called me dramatic my whole life. I didn't shout this time. I just let the truth speak louder. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube, this video deserves to blow up.